Today we're exploring what's old is new, a portable CD player, but it's not your run-of-the-mill portable from the 90s. This one has a long-lasting internal battery, vacuum tubes, an R2R DAC, inputs and outputs for portable as well as home use. Really one of the coolest products I've had in for 2025 thus far. Matt Kuykendall here. I review everything hi-fi, new and old, budget to outlandish, as well as many DIY designs. I'm also a contributing author for the Absolute Sound magazine, so I see a little bit of everything come through here. I feel like that's something a little unique from many of the other channels. I give the budget gear the same attention as the high end. I really appreciate both in this space. I've had this one in for a couple months now. I'm not one to turn and burn reviews where the product comes in and then 2 days later I'm throwing out a video. That's not my style, and honestly, I think that's a disservice to all of you watching. I like to find the gotchas and sometimes weird quirks before letting all of you know what I really think about it. So while this one is pretty clean cut, it does still have a couple quirks that I want to touch on later in this review. And if you'd like to see product reviews where the product actually gets used and properly tested, stick around and give me a subscription. I'd totally appreciate it. At the end of the video, I'm gonna grab a few viewer questions as well on this product, so stick around and let's see how that all pans out. I started out my journey with the EC0T by taking it on a road trip. Nothing like bringing back some 90s nostalgia, like taking along a stack of CDs for a 6-hour car drive. I think that was actually one of the best parts. Rather than an endless library at my disposal, creating the Netflix effect where it's almost like an overload preventing you from picking anything. This had me carefully selecting the albums, thinking about covering different genres and even moods that I potentially might be in. The family and I were making a road trip out to Wisconsin to visit my brother and his family. But on the way there, we had a detour to stay at the mother-in-law's out at her lake place. So while the kids were out swimming, I was on the deck supervising and listening to CD after CD. Some of my initial impressions were just how nice the build quality is on this. It has a really heavy feeling in the hands, and the material choices are actually really premium. You have this tempered glass top and bottom, and yes, it can definitely be a fingerprint magnet, but the looks can't be denied either. I mean, this thing really has a nice look. You have this magnetic lid, and it gives you a satisfying thunk when it locks into a CD. It has a nice screen with easy to read characters for setting and track info, and that does bring into focus quirk number 1. It's a really easy reading and fantastic looking screen, but if you have this in direct sunlight, it might be a little bit difficult to see. Inside or in normal conditions, it's perfectly fine, and it's actually pretty bright, just not the most legible in direct sun conditions. With that out of the way, the real party trick on this one is this little window here that houses the tubes. When you activate the tube mode, because it is selectable on or off, the Jan 6418 tubes light up with this warm amber glow. Very much so functional eye candy at its best. Giving you guys a tour of the rest of the unit before we jump into the performance and use cases. The controls are pretty well laid out in my opinion. A small button on the side here, a brief hold powers the unit on as well as turns it off. I really like this volume slider on the front. It's very smooth and works seamlessly with the screen. It's kind of a cool effect. It's definitely something that could be bumped if you're using this in portable mode, so take caution or use the lock that's located on the side of the unit here to disable the volume slide as well as all the rest of the controls. We do have all the standard track controls in the front here. This one will cycle the output as well as give you a menu structure. We have 2 gain settings, low and high. PCM filters, no oversampling and oversampling. My preference was no oversampling, but I'm gonna touch on that later. Then we get that tube mode. I found myself listening with the tubes on more than off. You'll notice a touch of a drop in volume when you enable the tubes, which is to be expected since this tube is actually in the output stage. This isn't a gimmick or something operating as a tube buffer. The dual Jan 6418 tubes that they have in place here, they're low voltage, low power consumption, which is obviously the right characteristics when you're operating something like this that's battery powered. I'll touch on the sound characteristics a little bit later, but first I want to get through the rest of these features. A few more mode options in the menu to touch on. We have the CD playback modes, the brightness level of the screen, always on up to 60 seconds, balance, which is a nice touch on a portable, audio output, and that's going to have the primary headphone out, as well as the line out, digital out, and Bluetooth. Last but not least, we have the smart volume, which just changes how the slider interacts with the volume changes. The very front has the volume slide along with the 3.5 and 4.4 outputs. And if we flip it around, we get a little bit of everything. A matching 3.5 and 4.4 for output to connect to something like your home system. A coax optical output, which it doesn't come with the required cable adapter. I feel like it should, but nonetheless, this one's gonna be on you to pick up if you plan to use this particular digital out. I guess we can add that to the quirk list as well. From there, we have the USB DAC output, which you can cycle this from the front menu as well, and then the USB DC in for power. A use case out of the norm could be to actually use this as an R2R DAC within your system, running completely off of battery power. Sure, it's gonna require a charge here and there, but it's a unique use case for this one for people that are searching out the cleanest delivery methods. In theory, it should be a step ahead of bringing in power over the USB. Is this gonna be noticeable? That's really gonna depend on the USB connection that you're using. But that's what I like about this hobby. Experiment all you want and see what works best for you. I mentioned earlier that when you enable the tube mode, you do get a drop in power output. There's still plenty in almost all cases, and there was plenty for all of my pairings, but I wanted to go a step further with that statement. Running this on battery mode, for example, with the tubes enabled, high gain on this one, that's gonna net you 551 milliwatts at 32 ohms. But if you power it directly over the DC input, that power jumps to 1087 milliwatts. I found the portable power levels sufficient in really all cases, but there was a noticeable bump when I did bring in an external power supply. I would venture to guess when you have this portable, it's unlikely you're gonna be running extremely inefficient headphones. One, most of those particular models that are pretty inefficient, they tend not to be very portable. And two, most people just keep those at home for dedicated sessions. At the end of the day, it serves both worlds, powers next to everything without a struggle on the go, and bumps up the power delivery when you need it at home. Use cases for this one are obviously a portable CD player, gapless playback, electronic shock protection or anti-skip, and all the playback options you would normally expect. Use case number two, we have that USB DAC mode. It's a really competent and great sounding R2R DAC. Add in the capabilities of operating it over battery power and things get even a little bit more interesting. Use case number three, operated as a Bluetooth transmitter. You lose out on some of the tube goodness, but it's an option for those who might be listening on the go rather than just sitting and relaxing. Also, the battery life does jump up in this mode. Number four, this has a CD ripper built in. This has direct CD ripping to a USB thumb drive. It's not the fastest rip in the world, as basically it just rips at the speed of playback, but it works great, and at the very least, it's a convenient option. 5 and 6 both involve home use. It can be your line level source, connected up directly to powered speakers or external amplifiers, with plenty of options, single-ended and balanced. And finally, a CD transport. Just operate this as normal, but output through the digital output here, and then connect it up to a DAC of your choosing. I can see a lot of people using this at a desk in their compact systems, but then just as easily disconnecting a single cable and taking it on the go. Finally, let's touch on the sound character, and then get into a couple gotchas and viewer questions. I've tested this with sensitive IEMs, the new Meze 105 Silvas, as well as the fairly recent FIO FT7s. Although each of these offer different strengths and weaknesses, they still convey the same outcome with the Shanling. The R2R DAC comes across really clean and natural. It wipes out any digital harshness and basically just outputs a really effortless and organic type sound. When you switch on the tube mode, you do get what I would call just a gentle bump in warmth, but it's not over the top or smoothed over. I would say a good analogy for it might be the proper lighting of a subject. A harsh light can show just a bit too much detail, but a softly lit subject with the proper filter can convey something much more pleasant to the eye, or in this case, the ear. The no oversampling versus oversampling filter comparison is pretty simple. No oversampling gives you a little bit more of that relaxed R2R sound that I think a lot of people are shopping for when they're looking at this product. The oversampling filter tends to just tighten things up a bit for the more analytical listen. You might even find poorly recorded tracks respond better to no oversampling, while certain albums really shine with oversampling. That's really the great thing about this, having all these tuning options available. The sound delivery on this one is simple, but at the same time gives you a lot of options. And I personally feel like it's the right options too. The general DAC filters we see with the varying degrees of roll-off are often hard to tune, and in many cases hard to even tell one another being different. But having options like being able to cycle on tubes and having these oversampling options really simplifies it, but at the same time, it in many ways widens the tuning capabilities. You can actually hear the differences. It's honestly pretty clear and easy to differentiate between these. The gotchas with this one are DC power to reach the full power outputs. It wasn't a problem in my pairings, but I just want you guys to be aware of it. Number two, no case. As beautiful as this unit is and how much I really do want to look at it, I really don't want to damage it at this price point. and an included case would have been fantastic here. I do see that they have one available for purchase, and if you're gonna have this mobile very often, I think you should definitely consider it. Also, there's no adapter included for that digital out. It's such a great feature, so I was hoping to see it included. Truthfully speaking, the internal DAC sounds great though, so you may be better off skipping that digital out and just, using single editor balanced and taking full advantage of that R2R DAC that's included with it. Finally, no remote. Yeah, it's a portable, I do get that. But just like the topic right before this, I think the player is good enough to use as a dedicated CD player or transport, and a remote would have bumped up its capabilities just a step further from here. Before jumping into the viewer questions and comments, I just want to know what you guys think. Are you jumping back into the CD or even CD portable game? I think this is a really compelling option if it's in the space that interests you. Like I said earlier, possibly one of my favorite products to come in for 2025 so far. It's fun, it's feature rich, and it's certainly well made. Now let's get into these viewer comments and questions. Okay, comment number 1. It's good to see that quality portable CD players are being made again, and it's not just cheapo junk. So it's not really a question, but I just really wanted to comment on this. Yeah, I agree. If you search portable players in Amazon, your options are honestly pretty terrible outside of a few out there that are pretty good. I would expect to see a few more jump into the fold this year. At this point, we have the top end area kind of covered with a Shanling product like today, and the more budget oriented with the FIO that I've previously reviewed. So I guess I hope to see, some options fill in this price point between the two, or come up with some new features and capabilities that we haven't already seen 5 times before it. Okay, on to comment number 2. Very cool device, but I can't imagine myself going back to lugging around physical media. I understand this now that I no longer carry around the old binder of CDs like I used to growing up. To be honest, lugging around the CDs wasn't my favorite part either, but picking them out was actually a lot more enjoyable than you might expect. Like I mentioned earlier in the review, streaming audio is great, but it often creates that Netflix effect where it's too much content and it makes it more difficult to find what you want to listen to. Picking CDs manually had me strategizing how many I would need to bring, the types of music that I might want to listen to based on, where I'm at, what my mood is. Just way more precision that allowed me not to worry so much about doom scrolling and finding new songs to play. And instead it just, it had me listening to what was in front of me. Comment number 3. All of these new portable CD players, the internal batteries will eventually need replacing. Good luck with that. It's a fair point. In my experience with devices like this, you're looking at a good number of years before it warrants concern, but without a doubt, it will eventually happen. All I can say there is Shanling did comment on that they'll consider offering a replacement battery when the time comes. So I guess just enjoy what you have for now and don't worry about things like that are, in all reality, probably quite a ways down the road. While I have you here, check out some of my other reviews. I touch on DIY, vintage, budget, and the high end. There should be something there for everyone. Please consider subscribing, leaving a comment. I always appreciate it. Talk soon. Take care. Later.